privileges as judges is to honor books of special distinction that deserve particular recognition. And we'll start with the book that we've given an award of special distinction, The Memory Chalet by Tony Judt. The citation for this award was written by Brooke Allen, and I've been asked to read it since she isn't going to be able to be here. I first became aware of Tony Judt's work in the 1990s through his incisive and stunningly knowledgeable essays in the New York Review of Books, and from these I was led to a few of his contributions to modern history writing. As someone who spent several years in France and had developed a sharp suspicion of the compulsive system building and party lines of French intellectual life, I was fascinated by his Past Imperfect, French Intellectuals, 1944 to 1956. His masterful post-war A History of Europe since 1945 provided a big picture narrative in which narrative for its own sake is never ever subordinated to truth. I believe it will stand as the definitive analysis of post-war Europe for decades to come. I thrilled to the common sense and sanity of Mr. Judt's 2006 essay, Bush's Useful Idiots, a critique of the so-called liberal hawks who supported the invasion of Iraq. And in 2010, just months before Mr. Judt's tragic death, I was reminded, reading his Ill Fares the Land, of one of his predecessors, another great intellectual of encyclopedic erudition and deep humanity, Samuel Johnson. A decent provision for the poor is the true test of a civilization, said Johnson, and the last book published in Mr. Judt's lifetime demonstrates his commitment to the same belief. The Memory Chalet is a collection of the so-called windows of memory Mr. Judt published in the pages of the New York Review of Books during the last months of his life. Together they make up something which readers might define as a memoir, but which was described by Mr. Judt himself as a series of feuilletons. I have long been fascinated by the mnemonic devices employed by early modern thinkers and travelers to store and recall detail and description, he wrote in the preface. These are beautifully depicted in the Renaissance essays of Francis Yates, and more recently in Jonathan Spence's account of an Italian traveler to medieval China, The Memory Palace of Matteo Ricci. Such would-be memorizers did not build mere hostelries or residences in which to house their knowledge, they built palaces. However, I had no desire to construct palaces in my head. The real thing had always struck me as somehow indulgent, from Wolsey's Hampton Court to Louis XIV's Versailles. Such extravagances were always intended to impress rather than to serve. I could no more have imagined in my still and silent night such a memory palace than I could have sewn myself a star-spangled suit of pantaloon and vest. But if not a memory palace, why not a memory chalet? From post-war English austerity to Cambridge in the early days of the sexual revolution, from the ardor of a socialist Zionist kibbutz to the high intellectualism and raging egos of Paris's École Normale Supérieure, from the chaos of New York and Berkeley to the beauty, silence, and orderly simplicity of the Swiss countryside, Mr. Judt's windows memory transported me to his world while reawakening countless long-lost memories of my own. For years now, he has been one of the touchstones of my reading and thinking life. His respect for evidence, education, knowledge, and truth, and his skepticism for all forms of ideology are as necessary now as they've ever been. Simply put, he was the most humane of modern intellectuals. And here to accept the award is Tony Judt's wife, Jennifer Homans, who will also say a few minutes.
I was thinking about something a friend said to me after Tony died. She said, you can't love someone who has died because they can't love you back. You can love a memory, an idea, a book, but all of that involves nostalgia. It's a solo reflection, something we do alone. It is, in part at least, an act of grieving. But I've thought about this a lot, and I've decided that my friend is not right. It's not true that you can't love someone who has died because they can't love you back. The dead can love you back. They can extend feelings across the divide that separate the living from the ever after. But, and it's a big but, they can only do it if they think of it in advance before they actually die. And Tony knew this. As many of you know, he was very ill, and as he grew more and more ill and moved sadly and talked a lot about the afterlife. And he didn't believe in the afterlife, it won't surprise most of you. He didn't believe in it for himself. But he did believe in it for the people he left behind, and especially for his two boys, who were now teenagers. Daniel Nichols. He knew that it would matter a lot when he left. And it would be an act of love to leave something for the people he cared about. And Memory Chalet is that thing. It was the last thing he wrote, but he did not stay alive to write it. To the contrary, writing it kept him alive a little bit longer. And to me, this is a very important distinction, because his relationship to the text, to the writing, was for the first time in his life, I believe, reversed. What I mean is that in the past, Tony had always been completely in control of his writing. And now the writing was in charge. I've watched him write lots and lots of things, but nothing came so fluidly, so spillingly and pouring out as the Memory Chalet. This is the kind of writing that comes before knowledge, before facts, before ego, before audience, before all of the things that a historian usually thinks about when he sits down in front of a blank page. And when the writing is in control, of course, it's accessing something very deep and very personal. And there is something close, present, and personal about this book. And so, although Memory Chalet is a book about the past, it was also designed, and I believe intended, for the future, for Daniel and Nicholas, and for all of us. It was Tony loving them back and giving this to us. So it's on their behalf, and in gratitude to Tony himself for seeing and understanding how important this would be, that I extend my thanks to you for recognizing his achievement. He can't hear me or you, but that doesn't matter now.